The air smelled of gunpowder and ego. 52 of America's deadliest marksmen were there to become legends. They thought I was a joke. They weren't laughing by the end of the day. The heat of the Nevada desert shimmered off the ground, distorting the distant targets into watery illusions. It was a fitting metaphor for how the men here saw me. I stepped out of my plain sedan, the gravel crunching under my boots, and immediately felt the shift in atmosphere. This wasn't just the annual long-range precision championship. It was a gathering of a tribe, a place where the hierarchy was established with a firm handshake and a story about a confirmed kill in some sand-swept corner of the world. I could feel their eyes on me as I pulled my equipment case from the trunk. 52 of them, a sea of tactical gear, hardened faces, and the quiet confidence that comes from having stared down death through a scope. They were the legends, the operators, the men whose stories were whispered in hushed tones in armories and forward operating bases. And then there was me, competitor number 53, last on the list. A young private, barely old enough to shave, pointed me toward the registration tent. "Registration's over there, ma'am." His voice was polite, but his eyes flickered with the same dismissive curiosity as everyone else's. I gave him a curt nod, my blonde hair pulled back in a bun, so tight it felt like a helmet. I walked with a purpose I didn't feel, each step a conscious effort to project a discipline that was second nature, yet felt like a performance under their collective gaze. Near the ammo check station, a man held court. He was the alpha of this pack, and you could tell without him saying a word. He was built like a bulldog, with a square jaw and a neck thick with muscle. A faded 82nd Airborne tattoo snaked up his forearm. This had to be Staff Sergeant Bull Miller. His voice was a low rumble, laced with the gravel of 1,000 shouted commands. 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq. He was telling a circle of younger, adoring shooters. When you've made shots with actual lives on the line, this kind of competition feels like a vacation. His audience chuckled appreciatively. I saw a younger soldier, Specialist Cody, hanging on his every word like a disciple. This was their world, and I was an intruder. I signed my name, Hartman, Emily, and the registration officer squinted at my credentials. "Hartman, don't recognize the name," he grunted. "Which unit?" "Air Force," I replied, my voice flat. "Well, good luck out there. You'll need it against these guys." He handed me my number. 53, the last slot. The one that would face the worst of the afternoon winds and the fading light. It wasn't a coincidence. I took the assignment without a word and moved to the preparation area, finding an empty spot away from the clusters of camaraderie. I knelt and unlatched my case. The reaction was instantaneous. The low hum of conversation died. The clinking of metal on metal stopped. Every head turned in my direction. For a moment, there was just stunned silence. Then a single, disbelieving chuckle broke the tension, and it was followed by a wave of laughter that washed over me, hot and sharp. Inside my case, nestled in custom-fit foam, lay my rifle. An AXMC, one of the finest precision instruments in the world. It was meticulously maintained, perfectly balanced, and coated in a pearlescent cherry blossom pink. "Holy shit," someone muttered. "Is this bring your daughter to work day?" The laughter erupted, louder this time, openly mocking. I focused on my task, my hands moving with an economy of motion that was born from thousands of hours of practice. I ignored them. I had to. Bull Miller sauntered over, his followers trailing behind him like pilot fish. He stopped a few feet away, his expression a perfect blend of amusement and contempt. "This ain't a fashion show, recruit," he said, his voice loud enough for the entire area to hear. "War doesn't come in pretty colors." More laughter. I continued my work, attaching the scope, checking the torque on the screws. He sees a fashion statement, I thought, my fingers tracing the smooth, cool metal. I see a memorial. This color isn't for them, it's for Chloe. It's a promise whispered in a quiet hospital room. Let them laugh. They have no idea what this gun truly represents. Specialist Cody sidled up next to Miller, a smug grin on his face. $10, says Barbie, doesn't even clear the 800-meter target. Make it 20, Miller shot back, not taking his eyes off me. I've seen this type before. All gear, no skill. My hands didn't shake. My breathing remained even. I slotted the bolt into the receiver. The sound, a satisfying, solid click. It was a sound of purpose, a sound that cut through their noise. The range officer, a stern-faced Commander Evans, called us to attention. "Gentlemen and lady," he added, with a brief, unreadable nod in my direction. "Welcome to the 36th Annual Long Range Precision Championship. Today's course will test the very limits of human marksmanship. Targets positioned at 800, 1,200, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. And for our finalists, the never-before-achieved 6,200 meters." A murmur went through the crowd. Nearly 4 miles. It was a distance that bordered on the absurd. "Competitors will fire in reverse order of registration," Evans continued, his eyes scanning his clipboard. "Which means Lieutenant Hartman will begin each round. Of course, I would be the one to set the bar, or more likely, to fail spectacularly for their entertainment." I walked to my assigned station, the pink rifle a beacon of ridicule in a world of olive drab and desert tan. As I lay down on the mat, my body settling into the familiar prone position, I reached into my pocket. My fingers closed around a small, cool object, a single, pink-coated .338 Lapua Magnum round that I wore on a chain. Pluie espondant. I squeezed it once, a silent communion, before tucking it back inside my shirt. "Shooter ready?" Commander Evans's voice cut through the air. I nodded, my eye already pressed to the scope. In my hands, the rifle no longer felt like an object of scorn. It was an extension of my will, a part of me. The world narrowed to the circle of light in the eyepiece, the distant steel target shimmering in the heat. "Send it when ready." The range fell quiet. The laughter was gone, replaced by expectant silence. They were waiting for the punchline. I slowed my breathing. 3 measured breaths, feeling the air fill my lungs, then a slow release. I paused at the natural respiratory pause, the moment of perfect stillness between exhale and inhale. My finger curled around the trigger, applying steady, even pressure. The world exploded in a controlled cataclysm of sound and recoil. The shot cracked across the desert, sharp and clean. An eternity seemed to pass in the half-second it took for the bullet to travel. Then, a voice from the spotter's tower, laced with surprise. "Hit! Center mass! Perfect bullseye!" A ripple of shock went through the crowd. I chambered another round, the motion fluid and automatic. I didn't smile. I didn't react. This wasn't about impressing them. This was just the first step. Beginner's luck, I heard Cody mutter, but the confidence in his voice was gone. I glanced over at Miller. He wasn't laughing anymore. He was watching me, his eyes narrowed, a flicker of something new in their depths. It wasn't respect. Not yet. It was calculation. The joke was over. Now, the questions were beginning. The 800-meter target was a warm-up, a courtesy. The real competition began at 1,200 meters. Here, the desert wind wasn't just a nuisance. It was an adversary. It whispered lies to you, changing direction, gusting and falling in unpredictable patterns that could push a bullet feed off course. This was where the hobbyists were separated from the professionals. I was up first again. As I walked back to the firing line, I could feel the change in the way they watched me. The open mockery was gone, replaced by a tense, wary curiosity. They were still expecting me to fail, but now they want to see how. I settled into my position, the rough texture of the shooting mat familiar against my cheek. I pulled out my small, waterproof notebook and a Kestrel weather meter. I wasn't just checking the wind speed. I was measuring barometric pressure, humidity, density, altitude, a dozen variables that painted a complex, invisible picture of the air between me and the target. A flash of memory, sharp and vivid. I was 17, lying on a grassy hill next to Chloe. Our father, a retired Force Recon Marine, stood behind us, arms crossed, a quiet smile on his face. We were taking turns with his old Remington 700. "The wind is a river," he told us, his voice a low rumble. "You can't fight it. You have to read its currents, understand its flow, and let it carry your shot to where it needs to go." Chloe had grinned, her eyes sparkling with the same competitive fire that burned in me. Your turn, Em, she'd said, passing the rifle to me. Watch and learn, Chloe. I'd shot back, the familiar banter a comfortable rhythm between us. She had placed a perfect shot, and the memory of her triumphant laugh echoed in my mind. The memory faded, leaving a dull ache in its place. I focused on the present, on the numbers in my notebook. My calculations were nothing like the standard wind charts most snipers used. They were a complex blend of established ballistics and something else, something more intuitive, a system Chloe and I had developed together. What's she doing? I heard Cody ask Miller in a hushed tone. Hell, if I know, Miller replied, his voice tight. Probably some civilian competition nonsense. I ignored them. 3 breaths. Half exhale. Hold. The world went still. I squeezed the trigger. The rifle barked, a sharp, familiar sound. A moment later, the spotter's voice, his professional detachment clearly slipping. Hit dead center. A low murmur spread through the competitors. 1 perfect shot could be luck. 2 at this distance, with this wind? That was skill. That raised questions. As I rose from my position, my face a mask of neutrality, I walked past Miller. He studied me with narrowed eyes. Where do you train, Lieutenant? He asked, his tone no longer mocking, but probing. Here and there, I replied without breaking my stride. Miller's shot was excellent, just slightly off-center. Good enough to maintain his reputation, but not quite matching my precision. Wind shifted right before I fired, he explained to his followers. Would have been center mass in combat conditions. He was making excuses. I knew it, and I think deep down he did too. By the 3rd round, at 2,000 meters, the field had thinned. Nearly a third of the competitors missed the target completely. The wind was a malevolent, swirling force now, a physical presence that punished the slightest miscalculation. When I returned to the line, the scrutiny was intense. This time, they noticed the details, the complexity of my calculations, the way I held my breath not for a few seconds, but for a long, controlled period that seemed to defy biology. I was deep in my process when I heard a new voice, a frail, reedy sound from the spectator area. I've seen that technique before. An old man in a wheelchair whispered to his companion. His face was a roadmap of wrinkles, his eyes sharp and clear despite his age. Ain't seen it since Sierra training. Back in 91. Sierra. The word hit me like a physical blow. My focus wavered for a fraction of a second. How could he possibly know? I pushed the thought away, locking it down. I had a job to do. I fired. Another perfect hit. The old veteran leaned forward, his eyes fixed on me. Miller, who had been standing nearby, had caught the comment. I saw it in his face. The casual suspicion was hardening into something sharper, more focused. He was no longer just a competitor. He was an investigator. The name Sierra had unlocked a door in his mind, a door that led to a world of shadows and whispers, a world he knew existed but had never seen. A world I called home. After the round, only 15 of us remained. The atmosphere was thick with tension. During the break, I sat alone, reviewing my notes. Commander Evans approached, offering me a bottle of water. Impressive shooting, Lieutenant, he said, his tone casual, but his eyes were sharp. Don't recall seeing you at any previous competitions. First time here, sir, I replied, accepting the water. That pink rifle. Unusual choice. My eyes flicked up to meet his. It serves its purpose. I'm sure it does, he responded, and there was something in his tone, a knowingness that sent a chill down my spine. He knew, or at least he suspected. Carry on, Lieutenant. As he walked away, my notebook slipped from my lap, falling open on the dusty ground. It was a calculated risk, a piece of bait deliberately offered. Before anyone else could react, Commander Evans bent down and retrieved it. His eyes glanced briefly at the open page, taking in the complex ballistic calculations and a partial sketch of an insignia, wings, and a dagger. His eyebrows rose a fraction of an inch. He handed it back to me. Careful with that, Major, he said, his voice barely a whisper. He caught himself immediately. I mean, Lieutenant. Our eyes met for a split second, a silent understanding passing between us. He turned and walked away. Miller had been watching from 20 yards away. He hadn't heard the exchange, But he had seen it. He had seen the notebook, the brief conversation, the look that passed between me and the commander. He knew something wasn't right. The pieces were clicking into place for him, forming a picture he didn't understand but knew was dangerous. The woman with the pink rifle was no longer a joke or a mystery. She was a threat. The midday sun beat down relentlessly, turning the desert floor into a furnace. The tension was a palpable thing, rising with the heat. After the 3,000-meter round, where half the remaining field was eliminated, only 8 of us were left. The casual camaraderie of the morning had evaporated, replaced by a grim, focused silence. During the break, I saw Miller on his phone, his brow furrowed in concentration. I knew what he was doing. He was searching for me. Hartman, Emily, Air Force. He wouldn't find anything. No competition records, no notable service mentions, no public footprint whatsoever. I was a ghost, and the digital void where my history should be would only deepen his suspicion. Something's off about her. I heard him mutter to Cody. Nobody shoots like that without a reputation preceding them. Maybe she's just good, Sarge, Cody offered, a hint of doubt in his voice. Nobody's that good without combat experience, Miller insisted, his voice a low hiss. And I know every female sniper who's seen action in the last decade. She's not one of them. He was right, of course, but his definition of combat experience was too narrow. As I walked to the water station, he deliberately intercepted me, blocking my path. His 6-foot frame cast a long shadow over me. It was a classic intimidation tactic. "Where'd you learn to shoot, Lieutenant?" he demanded, his voice low and confrontational. "Don't recall seeing your name on any combat deployment rosters." I met his gaze evenly, refusing to be cowed. "Perhaps you weren't looking in the right places, Sergeant. There are many places where women serve as combat snipers," he pressed, stepping closer. "Times change," I replied coolly. "That breathing technique you're using," he continued, his eyes narrowing. "That's not standard Air Force curriculum." A flicker of something, caution perhaps, must have crossed my face because he pounced on it. "We all develop our own methods. Do we?" he asked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Or do we learn them in programs that don't officially exist?" The words hung in the air between us, a direct challenge. He knew. He didn't have proof, but his instincts, honed on a dozen battlefields, were screaming at him. Before I could respond, Commander Evans's voice cut in. "Next round in 5 minutes. Shooters to their stations." The interruption was my chance. As I turned to walk away, I let my notebook slip from my hand again. This time, it was no accident. It was a deliberate move, a calculated piece of psychological warfare. I knew he would pick it up. He did. Quick as a snake, he scooped it up, his back to the other competitors. He flipped to the page I had marked with a subtle dog ear, the page he had seen Evans glance at earlier. I watched him out of the corner of my eye. I saw his body go rigid. I knew what he was seeing. The complex formula for calculating ballistic trajectories at extreme distances. A formula that took into account the Coriolis effect, spin drift, and atmospheric variables most shooters didn't even know existed. And in the margin, the partial sketch of the specialized unit insignia. Beneath it, a notation I had added that morning. S7P, Sierra Echo, Alpha Lima. His blood ran cold. I could see it in the sudden pallor of his skin under his tan. S7P, Sierra 7 program. He'd heard the whispers, the rumors. An elite, clandestine program so classified that most high-level operators considered it an urban legend, a ghost story told over beers. A program that didn't officially exist. He walked over and handed the notebook back to me, his movements stiff. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a wary, almost fearful respect. "You dropped this?" "Lieutenant," he said, his voice strained. "Thank you, Sergeant," I replied, my tone level. Our eyes locked. The game had changed. He knew he wasn't just competing against a skilled shooter anymore. He was standing face to face with a ghost. And he was terrified. The 4,000-meter stage began. This was a distance where physics became a cruel joke. Only a handful of snipers in the world could reliably hit a target at this range. The remaining competitors watched me now with a mixture of awe and fear. They didn't know what Miller knew, but they understood they were witnessing something beyond the pale of normal human ability. I settled into position, my ritual now drawing careful observation from all sides. The digital weather meter, the specialized breathing pattern, the bishop technique, as the old veteran had called it, the complex calculations, all pieces of a puzzle that was slowly assembling in Miller's mind. I fired. Another impossibly perfect shot. I saw Commander Evans exchange a look with a man who had arrived a few minutes earlier. A silver-haired man in civilian clothes whose military bearing was so ingrained it was practically a physical attribute. A general, out of uniform. The old veteran in the wheelchair stared openly now, his whisper audible in the stunned silence that followed my shot. She's one of them. Has to be. During his preparation time, Miller approached the veteran. "One of who, sir?" he asked, his voice urgent. The old man looked up, his faded blue eyes evaluating Miller for a long moment before he spoke. "Son, there are programs in our military that even seasoned operators like you never hear about. Places where they train shooters to do the impossible. The kind of programs where the very best go, and sometimes don't come back." Miller's shot at 4,000 meters was true. Not center, but on target. A remarkable feat that proved he was one of the best. But he knew, and I knew, that there was a vast, unbridgeable gulf between one of the best and whatever I was. Only 5 of us remained. As we prepared for the 5,000-meter stage, the atmosphere was electric. This was the edge of the map, the place where monsters of wind and gravity lurked. During the break, Miller approached me again. His tone was different now. No confrontation, just a raw, burning me to understand. "That pink rifle," he said, his voice quiet. "There's a story there, isn't there, Lieutenant?" For the first time, my composure wavered. My hand instinctively went to my neck, my fingers finding the cool metal of the pendant beneath my shirt. "There is," I acknowledged, my voice barely a whisper, "but not one I'm sharing today." "Who are you, really?" he demanded, his voice rising, loud enough for the others to hear. "Nobody who's never seen combat shoots like this. Nobody." All eyes turned to me. The moment stretched, tight and thin like a drawn bowstring. They were all waiting for an answer. Miller had laid down the challenge publicly. I met his gaze, and for the first time, I let a sliver of the truth show in my eyes. "You're right, Sergeant Miller," I said, my voice clear and steady, cutting through the tension. "Nobody who's never seen combat shoots like this." The implication hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. I turned back to my position, leaving him standing there with the horrifying realization that he hadn't just underestimated me. He had fundamentally misunderstood the nature of the game he was playing and the ghost he was playing against. The afternoon brought a change. The sky, which had been a relentless, pale blue, began to bruise with dark clouds gathering on the horizon. The wind, once a steady, predictable adversary, became a fickle, gusting monster. It was the perfect storm designed to separate the merely excellent from the truly elite. 5,000-meter stage will commence in 5 minutes, Commander Evans announced, his voice booming over the rising wind. Weather advisory in effect. Visibility reduced to 80%. Wind variables increasing. These were the conditions Bull Miller thrived in. His years in the sandstorms of Iraq and the mountain passes of Afghanistan had taught him to read the environment in a way no textbook ever could. I watched him as he made meticulous adjustments to his scope, a renewed confidence in his posture. This is where real combat experience separates the professional from the range queens, he announced to his remaining followers, though the boast had a brittle edge to it now. He was trying to convince himself as much as them. Despite our antagonism, I respected his skill. I watched his technique, the way he read the subtle shifts in the dust devils downrange, the way he adjusted his body to brace against the gusts. He was a true warrior. He just didn't know there were different kinds of wars. A memory surfaced unbidden. Chloe and I, fresh-faced and proud in our Air Force Academy uniforms, our right hands raised as we took the oath of service together. "We do this together, Chloe," I had whispered, my voice thick with emotion. All the way, she had echoed, her grip tight on my hand. No matter what, the memory was a sharp pang of pain and purpose. It was the fuel that burned inside me. Miller's turn came. He performed admirably, his shot landing within the target ring. Under these conditions, it was a masterful display of skill that earned murmurs of approval. But it wasn't center mass. My turn. The wind howled, whipping my hair across my face, trying to tear the rifle from my hands. Most competitors would have waited for a lull, a brief moment of calm. I did not. My calculations in my notebook became more extensive, filling an entire page with frantic scribbles. I was factoring in variables that had no name, forces that existed only in the realm of chaos theory. When I settled behind the rifle, my breathing pattern changed again, becoming something even more controlled, a rhythmic cycle that seemed to sync with the pulse of the earth itself. What's that technique she's using? I heard Cody ask. Nothing taught in any sniper school I've ever seen, Miller muttered, his voice filled with a dawning horror. I fired. The shot was swallowed by the wind. The sound ripped away a moment after it left the barrel. For a long, silent moment, nothing happened. Then, the spotter's voice, cracking with disbelief. Hit. Dead center. At 5,000 meters. A collective gasp went through the remaining crowd. It wasn't possible. It defied the laws of physics. I saw Commander Evans exchange another glance with the silver-haired general, who gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod. The final stage. 6,200 meters. A distance that, until today, had been purely theoretical. A distance many considered impossible. The storm was almost upon us now. Lightning flashed in the distance, illuminating the dark, angry clouds. Final stage will proceed regardless of weather, Evans announced, his voice a challenge to the heavens. This is a military competition, not a civilian match. Combat doesn't wait for clear skies. Master Sergeant Dawson, a taciturn Marine Corps veteran, went first. His shot missed. No one blamed him. Miller was next. His concentration was absolute, his face a mask of grim determination. He drew on every ounce of his experience, every lesson learned in blood and sand. His shot rang out, and a moment later, the spotter called it. A hit on the outer edge of the target. A truly remarkable achievement that drew a round of genuine applause. Miller rose, a look of grim satisfaction on his face. Let's see anyone beat that in these conditions, he said, his voice a low growl. Then it was my turn. The wind was now a near gale, and a cold, hard rain began to fall. Lightning cracked overhead, and the world was plunged into a momentary, stark white relief. My routine changed completely. My calculations filled multiple pages of my notebook. My breathing became something else entirely, a technique so specialized it resembled meditation more than marksmanship. It was a state of absolute focus, where the rifle, the wind, and the target ceased to be separate entities. They were all part of the single, unified system, and I was the nexus. A powerful gust, stronger than any before it, ripped across the range. It was a wall of wind that should have made a shot impossible. Any sane shooter would have aborted. Instead, I adjusted in real time, my hands moving with a speed and precision that seemed inhuman. I was compensating for variables that were impossible to calculate, acting on pure, instinctual understanding. I fired during the heart of the gust. For several, agonizing seconds, there was only the sound of the wind and the rain. The spotters strained, their high-powered scopes rendered almost useless by the downpour. Then, faint but clear, a metallic ping echoed back across the range. The chief spotter's voice was a choked whisper, broadcast over the speakers for all to hear. Center mass. Perfect hit. At 6,200 meters. The world fell silent. The wind, the rain, the thunder, it all faded away. What they had just witnessed defied all conventional understanding of human capability. It was a miracle. It was an impossibility. As I rose from my position, my body aching from the strain, another powerful gust of wind caught my jacket, blowing it open for a fraction of a second. It was just long enough. Miller saw it. I knew he did. The partial unit insignia tattooed on my forearm. The same insignia sketched in my notebook. The wings and the dagger of a unit so secret, its existence was denied at the highest levels. His face drained of all color. His jaw went slack. I saw his lips form the words, though no sound came out. My God, she's not just special operations. She's Tier 1. I calmly began to pack my equipment, the storm raging around me, seemingly oblivious to the revelation that had just shattered his world. The silver-haired general approached me, his face impassive, and spoke words that were lost in the wind. The scene froze in my mind. Miller's stunned, horrified expression as he finally understood. He hadn't just been competing against another shooter. He had been antagonizing a ghost, a legend, someone from a world he could barely comprehend. And he had just watched her do the impossible. Thunder cracked directly overhead, a deafening explosion that seemed to mirror the shattered reality on the range. The perfect shot at 6,200 meters had broken more than just a record. It had broken the carefully constructed persona I had maintained all day. 30-minute break before the official results ceremony, Commander Evans announced, his voice struggling to be heard over the storm. The small crowd huddled under canopies, their eyes darting back and forth between Miller and me. The whispers were a low buzz, like a nest of disturbed hornets. Miller, looking pale and shaken, approached the old veteran in the wheelchair. "Sir," he said, his voice urgent and low. "That insignia on her arm, Sierra 7. The veteran studied Miller's face, his old eyes sharp and knowing. "Son," he said, his voice grim, "there are programs so classified their mission parameters change every time someone asks about them. Sierra 7 is one of those whispers. Elite shooters who can do the impossible when extraction isn't an option and the shot has to be perfect. But she's a woman," Miller stammered, the old prejudice dying hard. The veteran let out a dry chuckle. "The program recruits for ability, not gender. They find the 1 in a million talents and turn them into something beyond human." Miller's entire worldview was visibly crumbling. His 3 combat tours, the bedrock of his identity and authority, suddenly felt like child's play compared to the shadowy, elite world I apparently inhabited. Across the range, the silver-haired General Madsen was in a quiet, intense conversation with Commander Evans. Madsen's authority was now undisguised. He was no longer an observer. He was in command. I was calmly cleaning my pink rifle, the methodical task a welcome anchor in the swirling chaos, when Miller approached me. The swagger was gone. In its place was a raw, desperate need for answers. "That shot was impossible," he stated flatly. I looked up, my blue eyes meeting his. "Apparently not. Nobody trains to that level without a reason," he pressed. "Who are you, really, Lieutenant? Or is it Captain? Major?" Before I could answer, Specialist Cody rushed over, his phone in his hand, his face pale. "Sarge, I found something. A redacted mission report from 3 years ago. Operation Kingfisher. Something about a rescue mission where a single shot at extreme distance saved an entire team. The sniper's name is blacked out, but there's a mention of a specialized Sierra asset deployed after conventional options failed." My expression didn't change, but my hand unconsciously went to the pendant at my neck. Miller saw the movement. He connected the dots. "The pink rifle," he said, his voice a revelation. "The pendant. They mean something. This isn't just about shooting for you." For the first time, I'll let a flicker of vulnerability show. "You're right, Sergeant. It's not." The memory hit me, sharp and brutal. A phone call in the middle of the night. A somber, official voice telling me that my twin sister, Chloe, had been lost during a classified rescue operation. Operation Kingfisher. The mission had failed because the designated sniper couldn't make the critical shot under extreme conditions. Miller, his mind racing, saw an opportunity to force the issue. He turned and strode towards the judge's table. "We need to verify your equipment," he announced loudly, his voice ringing with accusation. "No standard rifle makes that shot at that distance. You must be using modified ammunition or some kind of illegal aiming assistance." Several of his supporters murmured in agreement. It was a desperate, last-ditch attempt to find a rational explanation for the impossible. Commander Evans approached, frowning. Is there a problem, Sergeant? Sir, I'm formally requesting an inspection of Lieutenant Hartman's equipment. That shot defied physics. Evans sighed, then looked at me. Lieutenant, do you consent to an inspection? Of course, I replied calmly. The inspection was a thorough, public affair. They disassembled my rifle, measured the barrel, tested the ammunition. They found nothing. Nothing illegal, that is. They did find exceptional craftsmanship, custom modifications, and a level of engineering that was far beyond standard issue. The rifle was designed by my sister, I explained quietly as they concluded the inspection. She drafted the modifications, planned to paint it pink when it was perfected. Miller's suspicion was visibly wavering, being replaced by a dawning, uncomfortable understanding. But he wasn't ready to give up. He huddled with his supporters, his voice a low, angry hiss. Something's not right. Her background, that shot, the Sierra 7 connection. We need to force her hand. He approached the judge's table again, speaking intently with several officials. A few moments later, Commander Evans made an announcement. Before the final results are certified, we have a special challenge round. As our top shooters have both demonstrated exceptional skill, we will be implementing the SOCM verification protocol. A wave of murmurs went through the crowd. The SOCM protocol was the stuff of legend, a brutal, specialized shooting course designed to replicate combat conditions under extreme stress. It was rarely used and never in a competition like this. My eyes narrowed slightly. It was the first sign of genuine concern I had shown all day. General Madsen stepped forward, his authority now absolute. His voice cut through the noise like a razor. Lieutenant Hartman, as the current record holder, you may decline this additional challenge with no penalty to your standing. Every eye in the place turned to me. The air crackled with a tension thicker than the storm clouds above. They'd given me an out, a chance to take my victory and walk away, leaving the mystery unsolved. My gaze locked with Madsen's. An unspoken communication passed between us. He was testing me one last time. Then I turned to face Miller. I saw the last flicker of defiance in his eyes, the desperate need to believe that his world, his rules, still made sense. I accept the challenge, I said, my voice even and clear. All parameters. Madsen nodded, a flicker of something that looked like pride in his weathered features. As preparations began for this unexpected final showdown, Miller approached me one last time. I served 3 combat tours, he said quietly, his voice raw. Lost friends, made impossible shots when lives depended on it. Whatever program you're from, whatever your mission is here, I've earned a right to know who I'm really competing against. I studied him for a long moment. He had, in his own arrogant, misguided way, earned it. You have, Sergeant, I responded, and you'll know soon enough. The pink rifle gleamed in the stormy light as I turned away, leaving him with a growing certainty that he had stumbled into something far beyond shooting competition. He had stumbled into my world. The SOCM protocol transformed the range. It was no longer a series of static firing lines, but a dynamic, unpredictable combat course. Targets appeared and disappeared. Shooters had to run, crawl, and climb between positions, their heart rates jacked, their lungs burning. This was Miller's world, and his confidence surged back. This is where we separate the real operators from the range princesses, he muttered to Cody. He went first. His performance was impressive. He moved with the efficient, brutal economy of a seasoned combat veteran. His shots were excellent. 4 out of 5 targets hit. His final shot, at a new maximum of 6,500 meters, missed, but only barely. It was a world-class performance. Then it was my turn. For my first movement, the difference was profound. I didn't just move, I flowed. Each transition was a liquid, seamless motion. My breathing never hitched. My shot timing was as precise as a metronome. 5 targets, 5 perfect hits, all while my body was under extreme physical duress. At the final position, facing the 6,500 meter target in the driving rain, I paused. For the first time, raw emotion crossed my face. My hand touched the pink pendant at my neck. A memory, so clear it felt like yesterday. Chloe, in a hospital bed, her body broken, handing me the pendant. Promise me, she had whispered, her voice a faint rasp. Promise me you'll finish what we started. They need shooters who can make the impossible shots. The ones that bring our people home. I promise, I had replied, my hand clutching hers as the monitors flatlined. The memory faded. I exhaled. I squeezed the trigger. Perfect hit. 6,500 meters. Silence. Not of shock this time, but of pure, unadulterated awe. Miller stood stunned, his worldview fundamentally and irrevocably shattered. General Madsen approached me, his voice just loud enough for those nearby to hear. Assessment complete, Major Hartman. Full operational clearance confirmed. Major. The rank settled over me, and I let the facade drop. My posture shifted, my shoulders squared. The command presence I had suppressed all day emerged. Suddenly, the roar of a military transport helicopter filled the air. It landed nearby, and the entire competition ground transformed into a forward operating base with breathtaking speed. This was never just a competition. It was my final exam. Sergeant Miller, Madsen called out. A word. Miller snapped to attention. Your service record is impressive, Madsen said. Major Hartman has recommended you as secondary shooter for an emergency deployment. Are you willing to volunteer? Miller was speechless. He looked from the general to me, understanding dawning on his face. This was a recruitment mission, and I had been the one evaluating him. I'm in, he said without hesitation. Gear up, Madsen ordered. Wheels up in 20. In the whirlwind of activity, I finally gave Miller the answers he'd been seeking. Major Emily Hartman, Air Force Pararescue, Sierra 7 program lead. I extended my hand. He took it, his grip firm. I briefed him on the mission. A PJ team was stranded on a mountain ridge, pinned down by enemy forces. Conventional extraction was impossible. The only way to save them was with precision fire support beyond any known parameters. The primary shot was at 6,800 meters. That's not possible, he whispered. Not beyond Sierra 7 parameters, I countered. Then I handed him a personnel file. He opened it, and his face went pale. The lead PJ on the stranded team was Lieutenant Leo Hartman, my younger brother. This was your final qualification test, he realized, with your brother's life on the line. That's the job, Sergeant, I said, my voice steady. We make the shots nobody else can make, so our people come home. As we boarded the helicopter, the pink rifle case stood out against the tactical black gear. The competition, Miller asked, was it all just a cover? The competition was real, Sergeant, I replied, a hint of a smile in my eyes. So was your second place finish? He actually smiled at that. Second place to a Sierra 7 operator. I can live with that. The helicopter lifted off, banking into the storm. Inside, I opened my rifle case. The pink weapon gleamed under the cabin lights. I ran my hand along the barrel, my fingers tracing the name engraved near the stock. Chloe. We're bringing them home, I whispered, too low for anyone but Miller to hear. He looked at me, and for the first time, he saw the full weight I carried. Not just a mission, but a promise. A sister's legacy. He was no longer in the presence of an exceptional shooter. He was witnessing a legend in action, a legend born from love and loss, armed with a pink rifle and an unbreakable vow. What do you think drives someone to push beyond human limits? A promise? A memory? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, comment with respect. If you want to see more stories like this, make sure to subscribe.